Hello everyone, back to today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for next week to 10 days for today's second video. This will take us to around the 30th of October, so we're almost getting to the end of the month now with the 10-day time frame updates anyway. Just released weekend forecast. Going to cover part of that period with this video as well. Lots of high pressure in control of the weather in the next sort of week to 10 days, but the position of this high pressure is changing, and so although it is quite warm at the moment down in the south anyway, we're going to go a little bit cooler at the start of this coming week, then it'll warm up again around the middle of the week before a real northerly plunge looks like it's on the way in around a week's time. So this time next week temperatures could well be something like sort of 10 to 15 degrees lower than they are right now. You will notice that northerly wind with a risk of wintry showers up in the north, and some light frost as well potentially coming along next weekend too. So autumn is progressing on, of course. We are getting well on into the autumn now. We're going to get a little reminder that we are getting very late into the year, I think in around a week's time. So I'll talk you through everything that's going on very shortly. Just to say, as I just said, weekend forecast has been released. So it details weather for the next, for the weekend, and there's going to be a lot of dry weather around, but temperatures will be alternating. Coming up this evening here on the homepage, around 6-7 o'clock, we're going to have your CFS 6 month look ahead for October. It's just for fun, and it's taking us from next month, from November through to April next year, with the long-range CFS V2 model. So that's going to be quite an interesting update, I would have thought, if you would like to have a look at that this evening. And I'll talk you through what's happening tomorrow at the end of the video. We're going to start off by having a look at the Arctic and North Atlantic Oscillation observed and forecast chart. So the black line here tells us where we've been, with the AO, the red lines at the end where GFS Symbols forecasting the AO to go. Remember, this is just an index that's reflecting the state of the atmosphere over the North Pole. It's not driving anything, just tells you what the atmosphere is doing, what the GFS model is forecasting the atmosphere to do in the next couple of weeks. So when you're in a positive AO, such as we have been really going back into the summer, we can go to the beginning of June with this just here, and you see that through most of this this period, back to June and up to now, the AO has been in its positive phase, indicated by the black line being in positive territory. When the AO is positive, you've got low pressure up over the pole, but when the Arctic oscillation goes negative, you find that you've got high pressure building up over the pole. You've got blocking over the North Pole. When you get blocking over the pole, that is a route to pushing cold air out of the pole and down into the mid-latitudes. Now, it doesn't guarantee we will get cold in particular, because this blocking could be sitting anywhere over the North Pole, so it is possible to have a negative Arctic oscillation, but at the same time we don't get particularly cold from it. But it is one of the things that we keep an eye on from now really right way through to around March or April. So at the moment the AO is positive, as it has been, as I say, going right way back to the start of the summer. GFS Symbols forecasting the AO to stay positive for the next few days, but you'll see there is a real drop in the Arctic oscillation forecast to take place in the final week of November. Definite drop in the AO, taking us into negative territory, somewhere where we haven't been, except for very brief intervals, such as this one around the start of August. And again, this one at the end of June. We have had, like, a few days of brief AO condition, but this is taking us down to a place we haven't been probably since around March, when we did go through a phase of pretty sustained negative Arctic oscillation conditions. So it definitely looks like high pressure is going to get going over somewhere over the northern latitudes, Greenland, Scandinavia, the Arctic, over the next few days. At the same time, the NAO is on the move as well. So again, the black line here tells us where we've been, with the NAO going right way back to the start of the summer, and then we've got the GFS Symbols with red lines at the end showing where the NAO is being forecast to go. So just as the AO has been in a very positive phase since the beginning of June, so too has the NAO. They've both been in their positive phases, and we're currently in the positive phase of the North Atlantic Oscillation just there. We're going to stay in positive phase of the NAO for the next couple of days, but then here comes the drops as you get through to the final week of of October and start of November, we are going into negative territory, negativity of the NAO. So this is a big change compared to what we've had pretty much throughout the whole of the summer and into the autumn as well. This is a fundamental shift within the long wave setup, I would have thought, around the Northern Hemisphere, potentially. So there could be big impacts from this. And it may only be brief. It may just be a brief interval, and then we'll go back to trend, which, of course, has been positive AO, positive NAO. But it could be something a little bit more sustained. We'll just have to wait and see. We certainly have had a very, very long run of positive AO and NAO conditions. So if we was to go into like a 2 or 3 month run of negativity of the AO and the NAO, that would take us through November, December, possibly to January. And if that happens, and of course as getting to the winter, we can start thinking about significantly colder times to come. Getting ahead of myself with that though, because as I say, this might just be temporary, and we may find that we go back to trend within a few days. We'll just have to wait and see. But to me, that is looking like quite a significant shift on the broad pattern that's been dominating the weather, as I say, pretty much since May. We've been in this sustained positive phase of the NAO and the AO. So let's just wait and see how this is going to play out. So these are the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts from the Penn State University. We've got the ECMWF on the top, the GFS, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 8,000 feet is an area in the atmosphere where high pressure and low pressure are being moved around by a jet stream running above. Red extrapolates to high pressure and blue extrapolates to low pressure. So these are the mean flowcharts for the 7 to 10 day time frame. This takes us pretty much to the end of October, to be honest. We see that with the ECMWF, we've got this area of above average heights out in the Atlantic, and also going to the north as well. We've got below average heights centered down to our south. There's also a big trough in over east parts of America. They're having a cold, they're going to have a cold time over the next week to 10 days as well on the eastern side of America. The jet stream is doing something a little bit like that. So it places us on the cold side of a jet stream in the 7 to 10 day time frame. We're bringing down the air from the Arctic. So although there should still be a reasonable amount of dry weather because we have got high pressure just out to west of the country, so we've blocked off the Atlantic. There's no particular rain-bearing systems there. Other than showers, which may be wintry up in the north, there should be plenty of dry weather as we close out October. But we're on the cold side of a jet, so temperatures are likely to be very chilly. The GFS is very similar. It has the trough a little bit more to the east of the UK. That's a big trough actually extending through central eastern parts of Europe. That could bring the first proper plunge of winter to many central and eastern parts and northeastern parts of Europe in the 7 to 10 day time frame. Out in the west, we've got this ridge of above average heights in the Atlantic, and it's also extending back to Greenland. Notice there is actually a little bit of high pressure right over the very top of the North Pole. The flow of the jet, so again, there's a trough within the 500 millibar flow across Eastern America. Then the jet does something a little bit like that. So very similar actually to what the ECMWF is showing with the GFS. It looks pretty cold, I have to say, as we go into the closing days of October. But with high pressure just to our west, not particularly unsettled. The most unsettled conditions will be across central, northern, eastern Europe with that deep trough of low pressure. Right, so these are the GFS ensembles for the next couple of weeks. We're going to Aberdeen up in the northeast of Scotland today. They'll be first in line when the wind turns into the north to get that cold air out of the Arctic. Well, I suppose the real first in line would be Shetland and Orkney, but beyond that, kind of like Inverness, Aberdeen, Merryways, the places that feel the northerly winds first. So we're starting off pretty warm actually with the upper air temperatures at the moment. Isn't that warm on the surface, I have to say, but it is warmer than average in terms of the upper air temperatures. Cools down a bit through the early part of the coming week. Then we get another warm-up around the middle of the week. This is all covered by weekend forecast, of course. And then obviously we get this big crash in the temperature in the second half of the coming week going into next weekend. We're going down to -5 and 850 HPA, which will be enough to bring wintry showers to northern and northeastern parts of the country, possibly snow even to low levels across the northern and eastern parts of Scotland. And then in the extended range, which takes us like into the very end of October and through into the first week of November, in the very extended range, it looks like we're staying pretty much on the cool side. Not as cold as it is just there at next weekend, but still certainly cooler than average as we're going through the first days of November 2018. Pretty chilly times to come, I think, once we get beyond around Wednesday. Temperature anomalies are looking like that from the 20th to 28th of October, close to possibly still ever so slightly above average. Expect these to trend cooler over the next few days. We won't look at them again until Monday, these charts in the videos, and I suspect by Monday we should be a little bit colder than average in most places, and still very dry. This is the precipitation anomaly from the 20th to the 28th of October. Yes, it is coming out significantly drier than average for the UK, for Ireland, for France, for most of Western Europe. A very dry week ahead. Say in America, cold conditions are dominating in the east, a real east-west split with a temperature anomaly for the United States. Many western states are coming out much warmer than average, but most eastern states and southern states too coming out colder than average there. Pretty cold scene over in the east of America in the week ahead. Precipitation-wise, many places are dry, so particularly where we've got that cold weather over in the east, much drier than average there. Also drier than average down the west coast, you'll notice. In between, we have got some wet states down in the southwest, but overall, quite a dry scene in week ahead for much of America. So that's how things look back close to home on Tuesday, with high pressure just out to our west, and we're bringing in this slightly warmer, actually, westerly wind across the country. So the middle of the week does see the temperature lifting up again. May have some dense fog, though, to concern ourselves with through the middle part of the week, especially so for England and for Wales. But nevertheless, yeah, that is relatively mild at this point. Thursday to Friday sees a change as we take that high pressure out to the west. We start to move it up into the northern part of the Atlantic. It's heading up towards Greenland. We've got a bit of warm air advection going into Greenland. So that's when you push southerly winds, warm air from the south, essentially into the northern latitudes, and on the eastern side of those southerly winds you'll inflate, almost like blowing up a balloon. You'll inflate the high pressure. As the high pressure builds, then it'll push out cold air via a trough, something like that. So there is the trough slinking through Scandinavia, but we've got these northerly winds pushing down across the country on Friday. If you follow the isobars back, the air does originate from quite a long way north, actually. The air is originating from up there somewhere, so that is a proper northerly wind that we've got pushing down across the country at the end of the coming week. We'll really feel that wind by Saturday. We're in a genuine northerly wind. Again, that could be bringing snow showers to north and northeast parts of Scotland, wintry showers in other places, high pressure out to west, low pressure as a trough across northeastern Europe. Again, the wind being brought out of the Arctic. There's the upper air temperatures, and you'll see the -5 isotones through the country. That is quite unusual for October. Remember, this is still in October. It's the 27th of October, so it's late in the month, but it is quite unusual to get the -5 isotherm covering the entire country like that. Usually in October it is restricted to more northern areas. By the time you get through to Sunday, this high pressure is toppling down across the country, so begin to cut off that northerly wind, pushing into central parts of Europe. But the air will still be cold. As the ridge builds in, of course, we lose the wind, and so by night, frost will get increasingly severe, I think, over the coming weekend. I mean, we're talking about -2, -3, so not really severe compared to what you get in winter, but for an October night, probably getting unusually cold as this ridge topples in over the country later next weekend. And then into the following week, so this is Monday 29th, we're still under this ridge, particularly across England and Wales, so still risk of night frost for England and Wales at the start of the following week, but further north, wind is turning back into west, so a little bit milder up there. In the more extended range, so low pressure starts to move in from off the Atlantic. This is the final day of October, Halloween actually, 31st of October. And by the way, we will have a couple of updates for Halloween and the bonfire night next week. So if you're waiting to see what the weather may be doing on Halloween and on bonfire night, I think we'll probably do the first update for those two dates on Monday. But for this update, it does look as though it turns increasingly unsettled as we get to the very, very end of October. I mean, to the start of November, looks pretty wet and windy. That's as far as we can go with the GFS run. Takes us to bonfire night, with the low pressure moving away into the North Sea. Again, we've got this ridge building in the Atlantic going north, so it looks like that's setting up another northerly push there in time for what could be a pretty chilly, maybe even cold, bonfire night. This LBE-CMWF is picking things up. So again, on Tuesday, we've got high pressure out to southwest, bringing in these westerly winds, relatively mild after a chilly start to the coming week. Wednesday, probably the peak of the temperatures. We may get them up to around 18 or 90 degrees, given a bit of sunshine in the southeast. But then Thursday to Friday, that's a change as the high pressure pulls out into the Atlantic, starts to move up towards Greenland. We drop this trough down into Scandinavia, and the squeeze of the isobars between the high pressure out to the west in the middle of the North Atlantic and the low pressures, the trough over Scandinavia. The squeeze in the isobars turns the wind into the north. The air's originated from a very, very long way north. That's proper Arctic northerly winds flooding down across the country as we go through into the final weekend of October. Stays cold into Sunday, but this high pressure is toppling in, so we cut off the northerly wind, but it will still be cold, and as winds fall light, there'll be an increasing risk of night frost next weekend. Still under that ridge as we go through to Monday next week. So again, even into the start of the following week, there is the risk of some quite significant night frost. Beyond that, we're getting to day 10, and it does look as though it's beginning to turn a little bit more unsettled then from the northwest. Although the ridge is still trying to hang on actually in the south. So even to Tuesday, 30th of October, which is day 10, we may still have the risk of some quite sharp frost down across England and Wales. But Scotland and Northern Ireland would be turning milder and wetter. However, we've seen from the GFS that just a couple of days on from this, it looks like we have a go at turning wind back into the north once again. And then we've got the GEM, that's looking all very similar for the middle of the coming week, relatively mild conditions. It's at the end of the week that we turn those winds into the north. That's Saturday, 27th of October, with again that ridge through the middle of the Atlantic going up to Greenland. Got the trough through Scandinavia. In between, we've got these northerly winds. That looks pretty wintry as we're going into the final weekend of October. Comparatively wintry. I mean, we are talking about the middle of August, so we're not going to be talking about widespread snowfalls and that kind of thing across the whole country. Wintry showers to the north and northeast. Snow on any high ground. Probably some snow coming down to low levels for northern and eastern parts of Scotland. And further south, actually quite a lot of dry weather next weekend. But the main thing would be with the night frost. That's the kind of thing we're looking for. So we don't want to go too overboard with this. We're not going to be talking about sort of sub-zero maxima and blizzards flooding the country. You may see headlines like that in the papers in the next couple of days about this northerly shot, but it is still October, it's not January, so we have got to keep sensible with this. But it does look much colder in the final weekend of October, and then we get through to the very end of the GEM run, which is day 10, Tuesday 30th of October, and we're beginning to pull in some milder winds from the west then as high pressure starts to locate down to the south, low pressure developing up to the north. However, I suspect that if we could roll on a couple more days, we will find this low pressure moves in that direction, and we will probably move a ridge up there somewhere and turn the wind back into the north again some point through the first week of November. If this is all looking very, very similar, I'll just leave you with this. You may remember 10 years ago, in 2008, at the end of October, we had widespread snow across southern parts of the country. So it can actually snow widely down in the south in October. That's the first time I can remember it in my lifetime up to then. And it hasn't happened after that. So it is a very rare event to get snow widely down in the south. But very, very rarely it can happen. And these charts are looking really quite similar to the situation 10 years ago. So I'll just leave you with this. This is the 25th of October 2008, when we was relatively mild with high pressure to the south and low pressure to the north. But look what happened through the 27th to 28th of October. Yeah, the wind turned into the north as a high pressure pulled out into the middle of the Atlantic, and started to move up towards Greenland, so the high pressure is pulling out up there. The trough of low pressure is pushing into Scandinavia, the squeeze in the ice bars between the two brings the winds down from the north. So almost identically to the day in the coming week, it does look very, very similar indeed. And we did get, as I say, that little snow event down across the south on the late on the 28th to the 29th of October 2008. It was this little area of low pressure just here that we see at midnight on the 29th of October 2008, just across the north of France. It's an area of low pressure that developed along a cold front that pushed southwards on those unstable northerly winds and sort of stalled across England and Wales. I remember that day very well. It was pouring with rain through most of the day, and then around 4 o'clock in the afternoon it suddenly turned to sleet. By 5 o'clock it was snowing heavily here in Northampton. There was actually a little bit of a covering of snow that evening before it all froze over overnight from the 29th to the 30th of October. As I say, these charts do look very, very similar even to the end of October. This is the last day of October 2008, when, again, we're having a go at getting those winds back into the north once again. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say we're going to get a snow event down in the south from these northern winds, because what happened in October 2008 was very rare, very unusual to be able to do that. I wouldn't totally rule out the prospect, because the weather is always looking for ways to shock us and surprise us, but don't expect it away from the north and the northeast. Don't expect snow in the closing days of October. But it's just the way the patterns, almost 10 years to the day, are very, very similar, which is quite unusual, because it's quite unusual to get something like that happening within a decade almost to the day. So it's just one of those weird coincidences, I suspect. That did lead us on to a cold winter, of course, for 2008-2009. That was our first cold winter of a series of cold winters that we have from 08-09 through to 2012-2013. That's kind of like the last one of the run of cold winters. There was a milder winter in there. 2011-2012 was a milder one. But overall, we did have quite a run of cold winters, starting with 08-09 and going through 12-13. And that snow event at the beginning of October 2008 was kind of like the beginning of all of it, really. Although actually I do say that the pattern overall changed in the summer of 2007. That's really where the pattern started to shift, but we didn't notice it for the winters until 08-09, starting with that little snow event at the beginning of October 2008. Anyway, I thought you'd find that little history lesson quite an interesting way to end today's second video update. That's it. Don't forget to check out the weekend forecast if you haven't yet done so. Coming up this evening, got the CFS 6-month look ahead. That's going to take us from November through to April 2019. Then tomorrow we've got the 8th winter update. Going to be a bit of an ENSO special, this one. Our analogues package this week is looking at El Nino and the winters associated with El Nino. So that's going to be quite interesting. I've had a look at those analogues already, and they are very, very, very interesting. I'll say nothing more than that. Come back 10 AM tomorrow for the 8th winter 2018-19 update. And also tomorrow we will have the October update for the Metro France and ECWS seasonal models. And as well as all that, we will have the third written update for Christmas 2018 as well. So I better get cracking with all of that lot. And I'll see you later on for CFS 6. Don't talk care. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.